Hi all, for our notable game today, let's look at another mega clash in the recent London Chess Classic. This is on the 12th of December 2015, Anish Giri playing white against Hikaru Nakamura, the USA number 1. So the Netherlands number 1, I believe, Anish Giri. So knight f3, we see a flexible system from Anish, King's Indian attack it could be, or it could transpose into an English. Depending on what black does, it could transpose into a variety of different systems. We see d5 as the response. And now g3, knight f6, bishop g2. So this is Reti opening, and still it becomes classified actually as the New York and Capablanca systems according to ChessGames.com. We see the move e6 here, white castles, bishop e7, d3. For me, this looks like a King's Indian defense in reverse, and it's very easy to play. I've been playing this myself a lot recently in Blitz chess, and we see castles, knight bd2, c5, and white goes for e4. So quite often white will be tempted for e5, or sometimes e takes d. These are two viable possibilities. Knight c6. For the moment here we see rook e1. This is actually the most popular move, not committing the pawn structure change yet for either e5 or e takes. Seeing what black does. Black's two main options are either b5 or queen c7 here, it seems, from my book. Queen c7 was played, and we have another move not committing the pawn structure just yet, queen e2. So still it's got an idea of either e5 or ed, generally speaking. Black increases space on the queen side, and now white actually plays a little bit on the queen side with a4, trying to fix down black's pawns. Black played b4 here, and here instead of e5, which is quite a common idea in general, we see in fact ed in this position. E takes d5. And now e takes d5, and with the queen on c7 we see knight b3. It's more effective than usual with bishop f4 to gain a tempo on the queen. It seems a fairly pleasant position for white if white's not being run over on the queen side. We see rook e8, bishop f4 gaining a tempo. The queen goes to b6 here, and it does seem to be asking for another tempo loss, but the idea now, this is played, the idea is to put the queen on b5. So it's kind of trying to maybe discourage a d4 from white, and also support c4 at some point, possibly. We see queen d2 getting out of that, and also have any problems on the e file. Bishop e6. And now the move a6 is played. White's ideas for a6, for me, seems to be about the diagonal. Eventually, diagonal pressure on the light squares, if the queen side can be opened up. It seems a far cry at the moment from the queen side being a centre of action for white. But let's see what happens. Bishop f8, knight e5, challenging the defensive knight on the diagonal. That's taken. Bishop takes e5, threatening to fracture black's pawns. The knight gets out of the way. Bishop f4. We see here now queen b6, and it's here that the queen side with the bishops kind of pointing at the queen side. White opens up the queen side, believe it or not, with c3. This move c3 here is played, and it's tactically possible to do this. It looks as though, hold on a sec, there's a loose knight on b3. Black actually played rook ac8. If Nakamura took on c3 and then took here on b3, the queen is trapped here. This is not good for black to have the trapped queen there. So after c3, yes, it is possible for white to do this, and one of the implications potentially is a slower version of c4 where the bishop is opened up on the diagonal, and in fact that would make the a6 pawn seem quite useful for bishop b7. We see rook ac8, and now we see queen c2, and black actually does open up a bit the scope of this bishop with this move d4. It does tactically threaten, of course, b takes with taking the knight later. So white has to react to that. The knight gets out of the way. But knight c4 would seem a useful idea for white here. We see h6 with the immediate threat of g5 trapping the bishop. White stops that with h4. And now we see d takes c3. B takes c3. And here it does seem tempting to play the move b3. Engines suggest this might be the way to go, actually, b3. For example, this position with c4 seems quite promising for black, this pawn sack idea, and to put pressure on d3. This seems quite a promising position as an example with ideas of knight d3 still. So that would be an interesting way of approaching things. But we see in the game, actually, b takes c3 being played, which, although it isolates the pawn, you see that these bishops are actually seemingly very pleasantly activated now on these two diagonals, with the a6 pawn, of course, being able to facilitate the bishop now for bishop b7. Only a few moves ago this would be unimaginable, this queenside pressure, but here it seems extremely pleasant for white. So white has basically played kind of a default system avoiding opening theory and achieved what seems to be a very pleasant position indeed. We see knight f6, knight c4 hitting the queen. Queen goes back to d8 here. It has to be careful where it goes. Where does the queen actually go? It goes to d8. Now we see bishop b7, which looks to be winning the exchange virtually, because where is the rook going? The thing is, black has the forcing move knight d5. Is black going to take out the f4 bishop? Queen d2. Knight takes f4 here. Yes, white here does not want to play bishop takes c8. There's all sorts of things for black. For example, the check there and then taking. White takes on f4. Of course, freeing the rook up, it seems. But the rook here doesn't actually move. Nakamura tries to sack the exchange to get a pawn here, a centre pawn, undermining now the c4 knight. If he had played rook c7, this position is interesting. Just to quickly check out what is the situation here. Apparently it's a small advantage for white with this move. Let's see what's happening here. The queen is tied down with the rook on c7, so can't really take on d3. The queen's tied down. We just take on c7, and that's no good for black, this position. So this would be an interesting position, rook b1, with the queen kind of tied down. The bishop is tying up a lot of resources there. So this position, if the bishop returns back, is pleasant enough for white with a small edge. Okay, but Nakamura ventures actually to play an exchange sack. So a very interesting exchange sack. The principal idea would seem to be to get a potentially dangerous pass pawn and supported by the bishop pair. We see knight e5, though, attacking the queen, queen d6, and now white again kicks the queen, so improving the position slightly. And here, many players would say, well, I'll take the exchange now. But this is a really amazing part of the game, actually. Can you see the move that Anish Giri actually played here? If I give you 5 seconds starting from now, you might want to pause the video. So white play in this position. Okay, not taking on c8. White plays knight c6, and it's got ideas like knight takes a7, and it doesn't mind, white doesn't mind about queen takes f4. Very, very interesting stuff indeed here. If we just for a moment look at bishop takes, rook takes, this position would seem, say knight g6, would seem with pressure on e6 here, would seem okay actually for black because of that passed pawn. It seems as though black's got some counterplay chances with the bishop pair and the passed pawn. But with knight c6, this is intriguing now, very intriguing, part of the game. Nakamura actually played a very radical response to this. He actually played a queen sack. Queen takes c6. Wow, he's grabbing basically quite a bit of material for his queen. And let's see the material situation. This material situation, there's two rooks which balance the queen, and the two bishops for the two rooks. Isn't white materially winning? Yes, it does seem a little bit strange, but black has the potentially dangerous pass pawn to deal with. Now, if the queen sack isn't played, this is a very, very, very interesting position. Let's just check it here. Why is the queen sack played? Well, if queen takes f4, the problem with this, even though it really makes the pawn structure ugly, there's dynamic play with f5 possible. For example, rook c7, f5 bang, and we've got the pin exploitation. And this position becomes unpleasant here, with the passed pawn now being dangerous for white. Ideas like that and that, queening the pawn actually with the bishop, helping tactically queen the pawn. Just to show that, for example, token move here. This position is dangerous with white's a pawn. Yeah, black's pieces are not in a great spot here to defend against that sort of thing. So it does seem dangerous, really, dynamically for white on queen takes f4. This position here, if there's an exchange sack here, again, bishop d5, and this looks good for white. The exchange up, of course. It looks as though white will be doing quite well here. Yeah, this is extremely radical move from an engine perspective. Queen takes f4 would seem to be one of the better tries here. Also g5, the crazy g5 is mentioned. On hg, queen takes f4 here. This position is looking crazy, but again, white is winning that exchange. And here rook d8 is possible. So this is an advantage basically for white. So it is a very difficult position for black. Let's look at, I mean, what else is there to look at actually? c4. On the event of c4, you might think, is it about winning the exchange? No, actually it's about winning the a pawn. This is stronger to get this past a pawn. Say black does this, well then we can just take the rook, winning two exchanges. So what does black actually do? Say he takes here. This position, again, it's the a pawn which becomes of potentially greater significance than black's c pawn. Yeah, if here a7 c2, we see this race scenario where the a pawn, yeah, is threatening to queen now, and white should be white is better. White's getting an exchange here actually, so a delayed win of the exchange, and this position is pretty good. The exchange up, very good. The exchange up for white. So yeah, this is a critical position. Nakamura basically sacked his queen. Queen takes c6. Yeah, but so he gets two pieces there, and yeah, it's a scenario which is evaluated at about more than +2 actually from an engine point of view. A forcing move queen a4, not giving black any respite here. Now let's turn it off. Black protects the rook, but an ingenious move. Black's position looks like it's a good team coordination effort here with the passed c pawn, but it's rudely interrupted with a simplifying move, believe it or not. And you might think, how on earth does white get off a pair of rooks here? A very clever move indeed, very resourceful at move 35. Can you see what white plays in this position? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video here, starting from now. Okay, rook d8, yes. Trying to swap off a pair of rooks. and it also, of course, pinning the bishop. So it would be unfortunate if the rook has to go here, because later then there'll be a resource like queen a3 or queen b4 if this pawn moves against the pinned piece. It can't really be tolerated pinning the bishop. So we see c4. A pair of rooks come off, and critically here, white now has weakened black somewhat with that pair of rooks coming off, and there's a very important move here actually, which further kind of simplifies the position in white's favour. Can you see what white can do in this position starting from now? Okay, it's a crushing hammer blow type move. Rook takes e6, bang. Yeah, it's weakening d7. Immediately the queen pounces on d7. So winning a pawn for the exchange there. Then you might think, hold on a sec. Black c pawn, is that still dangerous at all? We see queen f7. So attacking the bishop. There's no time to make a runner because the queen will be attacking the rook after. The bishop moves. But now another clever move, h5, giving black no time really, because now there's queen g6 check and hitting the rook after. There's no time for c3. We see rook g5 defending g6. And now another great move from Anish Giri. He plays actually king g2. He's going to play now f4, supported by the queen here. There's no bishop f4 resource. So protecting g3 with the king for f4. And we see that c3, making a run for it, f4. And here, black actually resigns. There's really no time for this pawn to queen. Let's just check this position out. If c2, then simply fg, allowing black to queen, but runs into the check here. And this is a mating net, check and mate. And let's have a look here. Why is there no time at all in these variations? If here, check, queen takes d6, hitting the rook. This kind of thing, this is just hopeless for black. Absolutely hopeless. The pawn is going nowhere, basically going nowhere fast. It's going to be just blocked by the queen, and now white's a pawn will be triumphing soon. So yeah, it was a crushing sequence of events here after f4. It's absolutely crushing. This is given as one of the top engine moves as well, king g2. But actually, even in this position, f4, apparently it was possible anyway, just for immediate f4. For those technically interested, this position is winning for white as well. So f4 was already on the cards here after rook g5. But yeah, king g2 preparing it. It works like clockwork as well. If rook g4, then we have the check, picking up the rook. And again, the pawn is not going anywhere. The check here will pick up the pawn. Yeah, we can pick up the pawn here. So the pawn never really got any chance to get going. Anish Giri, for a series of forcing moves, speeded up the position. The way he simplified with rook d8, very interesting. Starting to weaken black. Then the exchange sack. Black c-pawn just never got going. So the queen sack conception was a fantastic conception. Alexander Alekhine is regarded as one of the greatest grandmasters for very deep conceptions. But here it seems brutal forcing moves through like a cold shower for the whole queen sack concept. It just dismantled basically Nakamura's position. So yeah, Anish Giri showing he's a very, very dangerous tactical player. And he can really get the most out of any time in the position. He didn't give black any time for that c-pawn to make progress, really. Okay, I hope you got something from this game. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.